This episode of Trek Geeks is brought to you exclusively by Eaglemoss and the official Star Trek Starships Collection. Get the Enterprise D for only $4.95 when you sign up today at st-starships.com/trekgeeks.
This is J.G. Hertzler, General Martok on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you are listening to the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks podcast with Bill Smith and Dan Davidson.
From Podfleet Command and somewhere in the Bajor sector, where we're kind of searching for some Maquis type folks. Greetings, everyone. It's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant. Welcome to Trek Geeks, your independent Star Trek podcast. I'm your co-host, Bill Smith. Thank you so much for downloading. We know that so many people find this show brand new every week, and we want to welcome everyone in. It's some great Star Trek discussion between two friends who've known each other for almost 25 years. Wow, that sounds like a long time now that I say it. And I know, right? And since I've invoked that, let me introduce my co-host, the lovely and talented Dan Davidson, and my aforementioned dear friend. Hey, buddy. Good morning. How are you doing?
Hey, pal. Wow, that was a nice introduction. Thank you. There's a first time for everything, isn't there?
Well, I figured that we should lull people in with a false sense of security by making them think we like each other before I tell them what a big jerk you are.
I was just going to say you're a big jerk, so thank you. No, it's good to be here. Always looking forward to sitting down and talking some Star Trek with you, man. As you said, 25 years. Good Lord. That's a long time, but it's only half the amount of time that Star Trek has been around, so I guess we got a ways to go.
Indeed, we do. And in fact, I mentioned people are finding, our show every week for the first time, and this is actually episode number 137. So you and I have done this dance a lot, and yet we still do it because we love Star Trek.
Have we done this dance a lot, or have we done this dance a lot? Because that's what it sounded like you said.
You are way too awake this morning. I'm just going to throw that out.
I'm very awake. Yes. 137. It's amazing. Every single one of these episodes has been a joy to do. I'm looking forward to this one because for people who may have been listening more than just this week for the first time, the last couple of weeks, we have been deep diving into Deep Space Nine episodes, and specifically the Eddington arc. I've been waiting all week to do that.
That's so funny. You have, too, because I can just see it just sort of lurking in the background like, oh, do I get to say it now?
I do. Yeah.
It's a pivotal arc for Benjamin Sisko in the series, and this is Deep Space Nine's 25th anniversary year, and we kind of felt like we had to talk about this one.
Absolutely. The entire arc is fantastic from For the Cause to For the Uniform, and it wraps up with the episode that we're going to talk about today, which is Blaze of Glory. I will not start singing. Don't worry about it. But it's another pivotal episode, not just for Deep Space Nine as a whole, but for Sisko and obviously for Eddington. So it's going to be a great conversation. And as always, I can't wait to start talking about it.
Same here. Well, people are going to want to hear what we have to say about it, and then they might want to give us their thoughts on this really pivotal arc between these two amazing characters. How might they route those comments, suggestions, or queries to us, my friend?
Routing is easier than ever, actually, Bill. So folks, head on over to trekgeeks.com/contact, and you'll find a variety of ways to send us your thoughts. And please do, because we love hearing from our listeners. You can leave us a voicemail. You can Skype chat us. You can fill out the contact form and leave us a message about anything that might be on your Star Trek mind. Plus, don't forget, you can click the big blue button on the right side of the website and even leave us a message using SpeakPipe. We'd love it if you would also join our official Facebook group, Camp Kittimer. There are great things happening over there like Star Trek Talk, Star Trek Pictures, contests and polls. Plus, as we've talked about recently, the brand new Friday commute celebration where you will be able to watch Bill and I actually lip sync during our commute home from work on Friday afternoons. It's a lot of fun. And a big bonus, as a member of Camp Kittimer, you're going to get early access to the episodes of the Trek Geeks podcast before they are even released. But to join the group, head right over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer. And one of our wonderful admins, Heather, Jackie, or Dan, or maybe even Bill or myself, will let you right on in to join the fun. But please remember that any comments or messages that you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode. Bill?
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Why are we talking like this?
No idea.
All right, let's go to the news. It's time for the news from TrekNews.net. Spanning the Alpha Quadrant. For all the news on all the Star Treks, yo. It's TrekNews.net. Online at TrekNews.net. That was almost very theatrical. That was very nice.
Thank you.
All right. Whoa, rein it back in, announcer guy. So, Dan, we got lots to talk about this week. Some Discovery news, some non-Discovery news. There's so much in the news that first we're going to talk about the fact that Discovery has been whetting our appetites with some interesting details in a brand new teaser video they released on social media.
Teaser video that I was not expecting, and when I watched it, jaw hit floor. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, as you said, Bill, a new behind-the-scenes video dropped this past week on social media from Star Trek Discovery. I believe it dropped on April 26th. It was awesome because it had some great behind-the-scenes construction stuff, and it had an amazing voiceover by the original Captain Pike, by Michael Burnham, and Leonard Nimoy's Spock. It was really something, and we got to see, oh my God, we got to see TOS-style uniforms in flashes, which was awesome. As I mentioned, there were some set construction scenes, and you pointed this out to me. OMG, Spock's quarters on the Enterprise. That's correct. I can't wait.
And somebody on Twitter found, this nugget. They used the nameplate from Spock's quarters in the original series and compared it to the number of the door that Michael Burnham was walking through in one of the shots of the video, and it is the same. So she is walking into Spock's quarters aboard the Enterprise. So I'm stunned. I can't wait. You get to see a little flash of the back of Anson Mount's head as Captain Pike, which looks exciting. And there's some figure standing to his right in a blue tunic, which could be Spock. We don't know.
No, we don't know. This is one of the attention to details we've talked about so much over on Discovering Trek with what this writing team and the creative staff over at Discovery is doing. Little details I would have never. I'll admit it. I may be super fan 1701, but I couldn't read off Spock's room number to you off the top of my head. But somebody found it, and they've even brought this into Discovery. So I just can't wait to see what's going to happen. And just this little teaser video just sets us up for an amazing summer of, oh my God, what's going to happen next?
Well, last summer we went through, announcement after announcement of casting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got more excited with each successive announcement. So far we've had a couple of casting announcements. We've seen this little teaser video. And I'd say that my excitement and anticipation is probably even greater than it was last summer. And I didn't honestly think that was possible.
It's a good point. The excitement level was amazing, but at the same time, we were also, I think, a little nervous because, new Trek, is it going to be something that is going to be awesome? We didn't know. And of course, now we know. And because we know how awesome the first season of Discovery was, yes, I said it for everybody out there who may not agree. It was an awesome first season of Discovery. Seeing these little snippets that we saw in just this little teaser video, just makes me want it so much more. It makes me think of last year when they started sending out the little 15-second videos of the different types of equipment, really, just flashes of the equipment like the phaser and the communicator.
Right.
These videos are awesome, and I hope they continue to do these this summer just like they did last year.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I have a feeling that with just under 100 days to go till Star Trek Las Vegas, we're going to get teased even more, and it's going to drive us crazy.
In a very good way.
Yes, in a very good way. Moving on, Dan, I know how excited you are that our friends at Eaglemoss are now official sponsors here on the Trek Geeks podcast, but I'm pretty sure that your excitement went into warp drive the other night when this news came out.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you exactly how excited I was in just a second, but Destination Star Trek is happening in Germany. Let me say that again. It's happening in Germany. And on Friday, this past Friday, Eaglemoss gave a preview of their upcoming ships, which include the Shepard-class USS Kerala, which is going to be coming out in September. And for the first time, we got to see the Discovery-era Klingon bird of prey. Both just look amazeballs. They are just so great. I cannot wait to see them in person. But I'm getting excited just talking about it right now. The news that it literally, and my sister and brother-in-law can tell you this really happened. I was dancing in the living room of my sister's house this past Friday night when the announcement came that the Pike era Enterprise that we saw in the finale of Discovery's first season is going to be an Eaglemoss starship. It might be a ways down the road, Bill, but I will be getting that one, and maybe more than one, maybe a few. Have a little fleet of my own Pike era Enterprises from Discovery. Oh my God, it looks amazing. Go check it out. It's great.
Well, these Discovery starships that Eaglemoss is doing they're bigger, and the detail is is even more amazing than it is on the regular size ships that they do as part of the official Star Trek Starships Collection, which we'll talk about in just a bit. But I can imagine what that Enterprise from Discovery is going to look like as one of those larger models. And I want a fleet of them just like you do. It's amazing.
I'm going to be honest. I've only watched that last scene of Discovery's first season twice. And I don't want to overwatch it because I can't wait to see what's going to happen in season 2. But the detail on that ship, I know people have been, oh, this is different, that's different. It's awesome. It takes place before TOS, so there can be changes. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. And to have this in a ship that I can hold in my hand or put at my desk, I cannot thank Eaglemoss enough for announcing this, because it's something that I'm going to be looking forward to until the day it's available to click on that place order button.
I guarantee you I won't drop that one because my hands will never come near it.
I don't think you could guarantee anything like that. That's really drawing the line, man.
Wow. Okay, moving on. Dan, there's also some pretty big news this week. And for once, it is not Discovery related. It's big screen movie related.
This came as a shock, too. What the great thing about the announcements that we have had this week is they've all been like, oh, my God, didn't even expect that. And this was one of them. Paramount has confirmed that there are not one, but there are 2 Star Trek movies in the works. And in addition to that news, the big news is that S.J. Clarkson has been set to be the director of the 4th Star Trek reboot movie. And this is historic because finally we're going to have a woman direct a Star Trek movie. I think that is fantastic. It is another perfect example of IDIC. I can't wait to see what happens. And so, though I'm sure will be more news coming around in regards to this 4th movie. Also of note of said movie, according to the information, Chris Hemsworth will be playing George Kirk in the next movie, as we heard about last year. And it's going to be interesting because, as we all know, he was killed in the opening sequence of the 2009 reboot. So how they bring him back or what's going on with him should be very interesting to see. I just love Thor being in Star Trek, so that's going to be pretty cool. And none of the main cast have been signed to contracts yet. But Bill, I don't think that's anything that you and I really need to be concerned with. I'm sure it's going to happen, and I can't wait.
I'm sure it's going to happen too. I mean, this brings to light some interesting details. So, S.J. Clarkson, the announced director, this is pretty exciting because, I mean, it's not like she's never directed anything before. She's directed episodes of Dexter and Bates Motel and Orange is the New Black and even episodes of the Marvel series Jessica Jones and The Defenders. So, I mean, she knows, good content, and I'm pretty sure that she's going to do fantastically with Star Trek. Some news outlets have misreported this as Star Trek's first ever woman director in the franchise history. That's incorrect. First was Gabrielle Beaumont back in 1989 on Star Trek: The Next Generation. So they're reporting it incompletely as saying it's the first one in the history of the franchise. No, it's the first one in the history of the movies.
Yes.
So
okay, then I did say it right.
You did. You said it perfectly right. Variety, the industry trade, reported it wrong. So,
gotcha.
The other interesting thing, of course, this means there's now 2 Star Trek movies in development potentially. The other one being Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek, which, as we've read this past weekend, would be a separate movie that could be possibly a separate timeline. We don't know yet, but it's not necessarily related to the Kelvin timeline that we've been seeing so far in these movies.
I think we touched on it a little bit when we talked about the Tarantino possibility a month or two back. But if it's going to be a different timeline or a different era or whatnot, it's Tarantino. I'm going to put my money down on hopefully a Mirror Universe movie.
I have no interest in a Tarantino movie because I find him repugnant and repulsive, and I don't want him anywhere near Star Trek. But I'm glad that it's separate from the Kelvin timeline. Because I don't think he would fit in that realm. If it's a mirror movie, I mean, I worry if we have the potential for mirror burnout, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And I do have to agree with you. I'm not. We talked about it when we talked about Tarantino a little while back, like I just mentioned. But neither one of us are looking forward to a Tarantino movie. For the reasons that you mentioned, but I would have to say that based on what we read this week and the quotes that were coming off these articles, it sounds like they're the powers that be are thinking that this is something that's going to happen, at least from what we've seen. So if it happens, it happens, and just hope it's done well.
Well, plenty of movies come close to happening and then don't happen. So it's entirely possible that still nothing may come of it. It's entirely possible that it may spawn an entirely new branch of the feature films. Either is possible. So we will see.
Okay. We shall.
Either way, I'm very jazzed about Star Trek 4 and the fact that S.J. Clarkson is going to be directing what could very well be a monumentally epic movie. And I think that's really the exciting takeaway. I can't wait to see what she's going to bring to the screen.
Neither can I. It's great news. All the news this week has been fantastic. And wow, what a great time to be a Star Trek fan.
And Dan, lastly, I almost forgot about this one. I don't know how I could, but QMX on the sly released a brand new item for sale that they just sort of slid in and didn't tell anybody about.
Well, they don't like to tell people about this particular organization. So it kind of goes hand in hand with how they do things. We saw it in the first episode of Discovery, and all season long, people were asking, what are those badges with nothing? They're just like these black badges. What's going on? And then we had the little 2-minute extra dropped in the spring with the Mirror Georgiou at a bar, and a Trill guy shows up and welcome to Section 31 with a badge, the Delta. So yeah, QMX released it. Oh, I think I'm going to be adding it to my collection. I can tell you that right now. And I know there's a lot of argument. They're a secret organization. Why would they have a Delta? You know what? I don't care. It looks awesome. And I'm going to have one. And I think you will too.
You're probably right about that. I'm not going to lie. Just take my gold press latinum right now because I'm going to fork it over hand over fist to get one of those bad boys.
I have to put in some overtime for all the stuff I'm going to be getting in Vegas this year.
Oh my God. There were a couple of other cons I wanted to go to this year, and the increased flight, cost to go to Vegas has kind of it made that an impossibility, but it's not coming away from my my swag budget. That's for damn sure.
Excellent.
Yeah, Dan, we like to geek out about Trek on this podcast because, it's called Trek Geeks. And lately, you and I have been truly and honestly geeking out over the official Star Trek Starships Collection, available exclusively from our friends at Eaglemoss Collections and officially authorized by CBS Studios. You and I have seen a lot of these ships, and this truly is the ultimate collection of vessels from across the Star Trek universe. There's the original series, through Next Gen to DS9, Voyager, all the way to the movies, through Star Trek Beyond and beyond.
Hey.
Yeah, I know, right? It's really amazing, the fleet of ships that they've built, and they're all incredible.
They are all incredible. And you made a very key point just a second ago, Bill. We've seen these ships. I have never held one of these ships until this very moment. For the first time ever, I'm actually holding the Enterprise D model in my hands as we record, and I am overwhelmed by the amount of detail that's in this model. What's great is, we've heard the commercials for Eaglemoss's official Star Trek Starships Collection before, and I thought they were going to be smaller than they are, and they're not. This Enterprise D fits in the palm of my hand completely, from my wrist to the tip of my fingers, and the detail in this is just amazing. I'm holding it up against my computer right now where the light from my screen is shining, and the light comes through the warp nacelle blue crystals and red crystals in the back of the ship. It's phenomenal. They are unbelievable. It's very sturdy. It's glorious is the only word. Glorious is the word, Bill. It's glorious.
They are glorious. I'm holding in my hands my own personal USS Enterprise from the original series. And like your Enterprise D, it fits in the palm of my hand. And the detail is just as exacting, because you figure that all of these models, Dan, are made from die-cast metal and high-quality ABS materials. And then these things are hand-painted, with reference to the actual CG models that were used in the productions. And when they have them, photos of the original studio models, like in the case of the TOS Enterprise. And then, of course, I'm looking at this ship, and it's in a beautiful display base. And I actually love the Eaglemoss display bases because they're designed to fit around the starship and not to plug into the starship. And these ships also come with this beautiful collector's magazine, which gives us behind the scenes info and then like original design sketches. And then it actually does like an in-universe breakdown of the technology on board, which is always the thing I really find interesting. You get the best of both worlds. You get the production angle, and then you get the in-universe angle, which I just, like we said, I totally geek out about.
You just mentioned a TNG episode in your description, and I commend you for that. You get bonus points. I'm actually flipping through the magazine now because I have the magazine in my hand finally. It's awesome. It's like a full 8.5 by 11 magazine. It's got a beautiful picture. Edition number 1 has a beautiful picture of the Enterprise D on the cover, and the detail of the ship and all the different things about the model and the design of the starship, the original starship design for the show, is in this magazine. The quality of the paper is like awesome, and I can't recommend it enough. It's really, really great. And I know that a lot of people listening probably want to figure out how they can get it. Well, it's really easy. All you need to do to subscribe to the collection is head right on over to st-starships.com/Trek Geeks. It's just that easy, and you will be able to get the USS Enterprise NCC 1701D for only $4.95 with free shipping. Bill, there is free shipping included as well.
I love it.
That's pretty cool.
It's
awesome. Additional models. I'm sorry, I'm talking.
Okay.
Additional models of over 100 so far will ship twice monthly and will be delivered directly to your very own door or turbo lift or whatever it is that you want it delivered to.
Well, Dan, here's the surprise. So thanks to Eaglemoss, we are going to do something very special this week. We are going to give 4 listeners their own Enterprise D with its full color magazine and display stand from the official Star Trek Starships Collection. And I can't wait to give these to people. All you have to do is find us on Twitter at Trek Geeks and tell us about your favorite ship in the Star Trek universe using the hashtag
Send your ships.
That hashtag, send your ships, will enter you in a drawing to win one of the 4 starships that we're giving away. So, unfortunately, this contest is limited to residents of the United States, and you have to get your tweet out there on the interwebs by Sunday, May 6th, 2018 at 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. But remember, you have to use the hashtag send your ships to qualify to win.
This is fantastic news. We are just so excited about this. But listen, folks, don't forget, as a subscriber, you're also entitled to free gifts worth over $90, and you can cancel your subscription at any time, but you're not going to want to. Full details can be found, again, at st-starships.com/Trek Geeks. And fans who would like to purchase their favorite ships individually can certainly do that too for just a few dollars more at either online at shop.eaglemoss.com or at your local comic book shop.
So remember to subscribe. That's st-starships.com/Trek Geeks. And we truly thank Eaglemoss and the official Star Trek Starships Collection for sponsoring this episode of your independent Star Trek podcast. Dan, we convene on the 3rd episode in the Eddington arc. And of course, we were talking about Blaze of Glory. I had forgotten that it had occurred so quickly after For the Uniform. You know, I was looking through Netflix to watch the episode, to recap for this week, and I start looking at season 6. I'm like, it's not there. I know Jadzia is in that episode somewhere. It's not in season 7. And it's like episode 23 of season 5. I had forgotten it had occurred that quickly in the production schedule.
It's funny because For the Cause took place 8 months prior to For the Uniform, and that was in a different season altogether. So you're absolutely right. I did the exact same thing. I was like, God, is it a long period of time in between? I did start in season 5 and found it, and I was surprised. I'm like, wow, I would have thought it would have been in season 6. So I like how they did this, because we've talked about how this is an arc, but it takes place over, there's one happens and then there's a lot of episodes before we get back to it again. And then there's another one kind of quick to wrap it up. I like how they did that. I was very, very pleased with the wrap up of the Eddington arc. Only one. And I've been looking forward to this discussion since I rewatched the episode the other day, because based on our discussion last week, I have new thoughts and views over our beloved captain and how he handled things.
Okay, well that's good to know. I sat down and watched this, and as I remembered it, if I think about the 3 episodes, I kind of feel the same way about this episode that I do about Return of the Jedi, in the original Star Wars trilogy. I love Star Wars. I adore The Empire Strikes Back. I think it's the best movie of the 3. And then Return of the Jedi to me is a bit of a letdown. It's not terrible by any means, but it's not the story I wanted. And that's kind of how I feel about Blaze of Glory, to be honest. And we're going to get more into that shortly. I feel, for me, it's a little anticlimactic, and I don't really feel like it's a Blaze of Glory. I don't want to telegraph my hand a little too much, but we're going to dive into some of that. If you could, for us, do you want to give us the high-level sketch of how we got to where we are before Blaze of Glory in sort of like 2 minutes or less?
In 2 minutes or less, I can easily do that. I can probably do it in 10 seconds if we run a real high level, but I won't do that. So as we know, Eddington worked on the station for 18 months as the Federation chief of security on the station, worked alongside with Odo. And then we find out, he's also the leader of the Maquis, and he has been deceiving Sisko for a long time, setting up plans to steal high-level replicators that are going to be given to the Cardassians. He disappears into the Badlands for a number of months. Sisko's been searching for him for 8 months and isn't coming up empty. Finally tracks him down. There's battles, there's discussions, there's insults, there's books about French people stealing bread. And because Sisko goes a little crazy and poisons a planet that humans will never be able to live on for 50 years and is going to do it again to another Maquis planet, Eddington turns himself in. How's that?
That was pretty good. You did that way faster than the patented 3-minute recap that we go through. That's fantastic.
Here's a real quick one. There's this guy, he does something wrong, he's a criminal, and Sisko catches him.
That's really great. I'm really impressed by you.
Thank you.
For once. For once.
This is recorded. I like that.
So in our last episode, we got some really good feedback. But we often refer to Eddington as the leader of the Maquis, but we have to stress that we don't know if there's an actual leader of the Maquis. He's probably a high-ranking, terrorist of sorts, but the whole architecture of the Maquis is so that there is not a centralized leader.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's not one person that can take the whole organization down. And that's kind of really how terrorist organizations sort of work in the real world that we've come to learn to some extent.
I think, though, that he's kind of a figurehead for the Maquis.
Sure,
I did like how in this episode, we talked about it last week. We talked about Cal Hudson a little bit from the episode, or the 2-part episode, the Maquis, and they discussed him. And we talked about whether or not, or somebody actually wrote into us explaining whether or not they thought that Cal Hudson was the actual leader of the Maquis before Eddington kind of took over that position. It was an interesting message that was sent to us about our episode. But yeah, I can agree. There's probably no real leader of the Maquis because sort of like with the Bajoran terrorist organizations when they were fighting the Cardassians, nobody knew who was above them. Nobody knew who was below them because that way things were kept secret and plans weren't uncovered and people weren't killed, this, that, and the other thing. So I can understand the idea of not having a real leader, but I do kind of look at him as the figurehead of the organization, especially after the events for the uniform.
Well, I think that's what the writers want to do in this case because, he represents, the Maquis threat. And when he is neutralized, theoretically, the Maquis threat is neutralized, at least in the eyes of Benjamin Sisko to some extent. So I can understand it from that level. But I think it's important to draw the distinction that, Cal Hudson was a leader of the Maquis, but not necessarily the leader, because they told us that in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then TNG also told us that back in with Ensign Rowe, back in Preemptive Strike.
Correct. And I did like on the topic of continuity, I did like how they brought up Cal in this episode, Blaze of Glory. Spoiler alert for those who might not have seen it. They talk about how he was killed, which I thought was it was a very good thing to bring him in, but then it was another great idea to have some closure to that character because he was kind of left, escaping in the Maquis 2-parter. And that always kind of bothered me a little bit. So now at least we have some closure as to what actually happened to him, even if it wasn't a great thing.
Well, and there's a great reaction from Sisko, or I should say from Avery Brooks in that scene, when he finds out that his longtime friend is now dead. You can see the pain. You can see how he wished it would have turned out differently. You could see that this is a guy whom he had a lot of affection and respect and love for, and because of his choices to lead a terrorist group, he's no longer alive, and that you can tell that eats at Sisko.
Here's where I have a little bit of a problem with that scene, though, Bill. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's look at Cal and let's look at Eddington. 2 guys that did the same thing. They decided to leave Starfleet for what they believed in with what the Maquis was doing. The reaction that Sisko has had for both of them is so opposite of each other. I found it I'm surprised Eddington really didn't get on him about the reaction. He was a good man, was the quote that Sisko used. Okay, yes, he was, and he was friends, but Eddington was a good man before he decided to go to the Maquis too. I would think they worked together for 18 months. Maybe because Sisko knew Cal so much longer, he had that different. But the difference in opinions between just 2 different people was, to me, a little bit hypocritical on Sisko's part.
Interesting. I've always looked at it from the perspective of, with Cal Hudson at least, that Cal was like a brother to Ben. Even when your brother does something that you don't agree with, you love him anyway, and you hope that he makes a different choice. But, you at the end of the day, he's still your brother. And that was kind of how I approached that scene when I saw it. In Sisko's heart of hearts, he does believe Cal was a good man because, Cal kind of is, but Cal also wasn't necessarily poisoning worlds either, as far as we know. So maybe it's because Eddington purposefully deceived Sisko, whereas Cal kind of did something different and had that closer relationship. I'm not sure, but you bring up a really interesting point. I hadn't considered it from that angle before.
It's just something that really stood out to me when I was rewatching it just the other day. I was like, wow, he's so nonchalant about Cal and how much of a good man he was, and nonchalant in that he wasn't like yelling and screaming like he was with Eddington when Cal betrayed the Federation, and the way that he reacted with his death. Just, I was like, wow, really? It's kind of a little bit different of how you've been handling the Eddington arc.
You're never going to get tired of that, are you?
Never, ever.
Never. So this episode starts off with a communication that gets intercepted. And it's about missiles that are going to attack Cardassia. And they need more information about it. So Sisko says, I know who can give us more information. So he goes to see Michael Eddington in Starfleet jail, which looks a lot like... Yeah, go ahead.
Regular One?
Yes, it looks just like Regular One. In fact, it is the same shot from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. The Regular One space station, they took it right out of the film and dropped it in the episode.
Hysterical.
So he goes to see him in space jail, and they have a pretty interesting scene. I think for me, it's the most compelling scene of the episode to some extent, because they're not continually trying to have a one-upsmanship after that. It's the most honest conversation they have in the entire episode, even though Eddington isn't being exactly truthful.
Right. And let's also add that, these missiles are supposedly heading towards Cardassia, and the Klingons, decided to aid the Maquis by giving them cloaking devices that they thought were going to be used for ships, and now it turns out they might be used for these missiles, which is why they can't be tracked. And they have these missiles are programmed to change direction at any given time, and so they're going to be hard to find. So that's why Sisko needs to talk to Eddington. And you're right, that scene in the jail, I found it, to me, Eddington was a little manic in that episode, his eyes and the way that he was just kind of smirking, because he knew that he was holding Sisko over a barrel, but pretending that he didn't know anything about it. But his biggest mistake, I think, in that scene is as soon as he starts playing the message and he sees Rebecca on the screen, he shuts it off. And he's like, oh, well, this isn't for me. The way that he does it is like, it's so easy to tell that this was meant especially for you, Mr. Eddington. But a very good scene. I half expected at any given moment that Sisko would drop the field and go into the cell to be a little bit more ominous and threatening towards Eddington. But that never happened because, as you said, it was a very calm discussion between the two of them, the most calm and the most productive that they had had in quite a long time.
Even though Eddington plays him. It was productive again on the part of Michael Eddington, because ultimately he's getting what he wants in this case. And as we learn later in the episode, if Sisko hadn't, taken the bait, he would have just approached it from a different angle and the same outcome would have occurred. Exactly. Despite the fact that Sisko gets played, a lot happens in this scene, and Eddington kind of lets a little more of his true colors, be revealed about his feelings of the Cardassians and how much hate he has. And I think he goes from, defending the ideals he believes in, I think, to actual hatred of the Cardassians in my mind, which is, it's uncomfortable for me, to be honest. It's not what I expected, because that wasn't necessary. He seemed to be fighting for something a lot more honorable in the last episode. And in this episode, it seems just more like, I hate Cardassians, if that makes sense.
It does. The other thing that I found interesting about the scene, and it makes me think, because he was playing Ben perfectly, exactly what he wanted to do, and he would have done it from another angle, like you just mentioned, if Sisko didn't do what he expected. He was just talking about how he'd just rather just lay there and let the Jem'Hadar blow the station to bits and kill him, and this, that, and then the other thing. Did he really mean that? Or was he just playing to Ben again, over and over, like he always does? It's like, how do you know when this guy's telling the truth and when he's not telling the truth? Because he does it so often. That's what I was thinking of. Especially, I found it funny. He would lay down, put his head back, and just be like, "Okay, I'm not going to worry about this anymore." And then Ben would say something, and he'd sit up, and he'd give that look, and he'd say something, and then just lie down again, and then he'd get up again. And I just found that quite humorous, actually.
I know what you mean. He does blur the lines, but I have to believe that some of that is what he actually believes. I have a feeling that if that were the case, and if there was no way he was going to get back to his Maquis buddies and his wife, as we find out later, that he would have just let the station blow up around him, and not really cared per se. Well, he would have cared, but he would have let it happen simply because that was the end game at that point.
Yeah.
So Sisko does what makes the most sense in the world. He puts him in a runabout in handcuffs and says, "Let's go to the Badlands. What could possibly go wrong with this?"
Those are cool handcuffs, too.
They really were. And I don't know why he thought he couldn't eat with those handcuffs on, because it looked pretty easy.
It looked pretty easy, and he could have just done like a pie eating contest with his hands behind his back type of thing and just put his face right into the plate. That's how I usually eat. So I don't know what the problem was.
Well, I didn't want to say anything to embarrass you publicly. I want to talk a little bit about the B plot in this episode, because
oh, God.
I know, because the other two episodes, or the last episode, I should say, for the uniform, didn't really have necessarily a B plot that was this pronounced. And I almost feel like this B plot doesn't work in this episode at all. I don't know how you feel.
Really?
Yeah.
I love the B plot in this. It gives us a little bit of a humorous break, if you can if you want to look at it that way, of what's going on with Sisko and Eddington. I think the B story in this is just hysterical. I love what happens between Nog and the Klingons. And the interaction with Martok is just, I love it. I absolutely love it.
I think it's good. I just don't think it works in the context of this particular episode, because I think that it breaks up the tension and the drama from the Sisko Eddington story really kind of awkwardly. I think it could have worked in any other story, maybe a more ship in a bottle type story. But I just, for some reason in this episode, it falls flat for me, because so much hinges on the other storyline.
It's interesting they say that. I looked at it as so much hinged on the A plot that this was kind of a nice little escape. Now let's look at what happened in For the Cause, the B story in that one with Zial and Garrick. I thought was another breakaway from what was going on with the A story, and it was done in a great way. I look at this as a similar thing, but they used more. I mean, even though it was a serious situation, Nog is looking for the respect that he feels he deserves as a cadet and as a security officer, but they brought a lot of humor into it, especially at the very beginning. It's obviously the B plot is centered around Nog, and the very beginning when they're having dinner in Sisko's quarters. Another hilarious moment with Jake when they're having Earth food, but Sisko decides to put puree of tube grubs on it because we should be trying their food just like Nog's trying ours. I thought that was great. It was a great icebreaker for the episode, and it kind of didn't show anything of what was yet to come. It was a surprise of what was going to happen next. And I thought as the episode continued along, that Nog and Martok story continued in a way that made me smile and gave a little bit of relief for a quick moment or two about the tension of the A story.
I can respect that. I think that in For the Cause, we didn't know that it was essentially the story of Michael Eddington's betrayal until, say, Act 4. We thought it was the story of Cassidy Yates' betrayal of Benjamin Sisko. Mm-hmm. And that really kind of became the B story at that point, once Eddington revealed himself in a way. But the Zial Garrick thing also worked in context of that episode because it fit along the theme. In this particular episode, I don't know that this one works as well for me. Like I said, I think it's some great character development for Nog. I think the interplay between Aaron Eisenberg and J.G. Hertzler is really great. I think they work well together in the scenes they're in. It just, for some reason, it seems really unbalanced to me in the scope of this particular episode. I think it's just personal preference.
That's cool. I can respect that.
Oh, thanks, buddy. So,
yeah, whatever.
So, there's a series of scenes on board the runabouts where they're trying to evade a Jem'Hadar patrol, and there's this sort of give and take between Eddington and Sisko, where it seems like they're constantly trying to one up each other to some extent, and there's a lot of witty repartee, which some people may like and some people may not like, and that's fine. But ultimately, they land on the planet Athos 4, where the launch pad is supposed to be hidden well by interference, and they encounter a Jem'Hadar patrol, and that kind of changes the tone of what Sisko and Eddington are there to do, wouldn't you say?
Right. Absolutely. And in addition to the patrol, when they get down to Athos 4, there's a lot of dead Maquis laying around and patrol of Jem'Hadar soldiers on the planet, which was completely unexpected from Eddington's point of view.
And I think that brings home for Eddington, exactly how grave this all is. I think from prison, he may have had a sense, but I don't think he realized it was as bad.
Yeah. You could see the despair and sort of the slump in the shoulders when he turned the corner of the corridor after he had seen a few dead Maquis, turn the corner, and there are dozens of them just laying all on the ground in that corridor. I think that's when the weight of the situation really hit him, and kind of thought that all hope was lost, because at this point we still don't know what's really going on with the missiles. But in his head, I can only imagine he's saying, this is all for nothing. Everybody's dead, not knowing that there was still some people alive in that hidden room.
And these are his people. This is a kick in the gut to him, because these are the people that he's, been side by side with. These are the people who have taken up the cause together. These are the people who are his brothers and sisters in arms to some extent. And there they are, dead at his feet. And I got to imagine he feels not unlike the way Sisko felt, an act before when they were talking about Cal Hudson, because these are the people that are close to Michael Eddington.
I think he also makes mention, and it makes me feel how Sisko would feel as captain of the station if he lost people, or how he feels when he loses people under his command. I think he mentioned something about them being his responsibility. So not only are they friends and supporters of his cause with the Maquis, but he was also the person that was in charge of this cell or group or whatever it was. And you can tell that, that loss affects him both. I don't know, professionally is the right word, because he's not really a professional Maquis, but it hits him in more ways than one, I think. And that's very apparent in this scene to me. Yeah,
no, it really does. I mean, he feels the burden of leadership. When you get that close to people, exactly. It's not just you're losing people that you've commanded. You're losing people with whom you share something, and that's really, I think, what gets him. I think you're right. And then it's revealed that the woman who sent the message is the wife of Michael Eddington, and I think that's really kind of what made me at first, the first time I saw this back during season 5, go, huh? I wasn't expecting that one bit. Eddington introduces Sisko to his wife, Rebecca Sullivan. And I think Sisko looks as kind of stunned in a way as much as we all do with that deer in the headlights look.
Yeah, absolutely. And to top it off, yes, he has a wife, and yes, Ben, he is a human being who can love as well as have a cause that you may not believe in. But as it turns out, the entire missile thing is a hoax and just a signal to get to Eddington that Rebecca and the people in this group are on the planet and need to get picked up. That, to me, was the real kick in the gut.
Yeah. And that's, I may be telegraphing this a little bit too early, but this is really the element of the story that doesn't necessarily work for me as well. And if we want to cross that bridge now, we can. That's fine. But I felt like it was, I understood what they were trying to do. I mean, they had to give Eddington something to fight for that was personal. At least that's how I interpret it. And they had to find a way to get him to this place. So they create this message. And for me, I thought it was a bit of a letdown to some extent. It seemed like, that there was this fever pitch to get these missiles, and all of a sudden, it's about your wife? Oh, okay. I guess for me, it was a little underwhelming. I thought that it would have been good if they had carried forth some threat other than the Jem'Hadar that perhaps Sisko and Eddington needed to work together on a little more closely, more than just getting the people off the planet, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. What I would have liked to have seen, and this is, I don't want to get too convoluted in this, but I would have liked the missile situation to have been real.
Yes.
Even if they threw in this element of Rebecca into it, so they get Rebecca and they get the others, and now they have everybody that they want, that they could rescue, and instead, and I don't want to, give away too much, but it's going to happen anyway later on in our discussion. Instead of Michael staying behind and going out in a blaze of glory, if something had happened along the lines where they break away and they find the missiles, and at the last second, Eddington has another ship that he puts in the path of the missiles to save Cardassia and the Federation from getting into a war with the Dominion, that kind of blaze of glory ending, I think, would have been more entertaining for me, I guess is the right word. I still liked how it ended here with what he did. He went out the way he wanted to, being the hero, being the guy who sacrificed himself to save the people that he loved and believed in. It was, like you said, I enjoyed it, but it was a little bit flat for me in terms of what we were expecting based on what the episode had been discussing all along.
Yeah, and I enjoy it too. I mean, I don't want to telegraph the wrong message. I mean, this is an episode I enjoy. I think it brings the Eddington arc to a decent conclusion. I just think that probably there could have been better choices. I really like the idea that you suggest. You know, he could have gone out in a blaze of glory and still survived. And I think that would have created an interesting dynamic between him and Sisko at that moment, where maybe Sisko's realization at the end seems a little more human and heartfelt and true, rather than sort of, well, I guess he was, committed.
Right. that brings me up to a point that I'd like to talk about now, if we could. And that's, I mentioned it earlier, that this episode made me rethink how I was thinking about Sisko in For the Uniform. We talked about last week whether or not he was just, crazy with obsession when he decided to poison the planet, and the way that he interacted with Eddington with the holo communicator. He was just so non-Starfleet, and we would never expect to see this type of behavior from someone who's a captain in Starfleet. Watching this episode and how he interacted with Eddington in the runabout, and then his discussion with Dax at the end of the episode, made me really think, as you thought in last week's episode, what he was doing was all part of the game. He was kind of doing what Eddington was doing to him in this episode. He was playing Eddington to get the information he needed last week to get him to give himself up, because he's so much calmer and so much more thinking with a straight mind in this episode. Sure, they insult each other and they have their arguments, but it's done in such a different way. It makes me think that all of the things that he did the week before or the episode before were all part of the plan. What do you think of that?
I can buy that, and whether it was part of a plan or part of, the realization of his having to be the villain, either way, whether it was spontaneous or whether it was something he actually planned out, I think that it's the same end result, and I still am okay with it. But I agree that I don't think it was pure obsession. I think that it was Sisko being Sisko to some extent, because sometimes he takes those chances, if you will.
Yeah, I can agree with that. The thing that made me think this is we saw how hot-headed he was the episode before. And in this one, I can't imagine that somebody who is so obsessed and so full of hate for this guy and is going to get the job done no matter what, can be so much opposite in the next time they meet. I'm not sure the time frame between For the Uniform and Blaze of Glory, but his attitude towards it is so much different. And especially at the end, with seeing Eddington sacrifice himself, it's like, oh gosh, it's really too bad, because maybe we would have been able to get along after all. That's the type of thing that I was thinking he was thinking at the time, talking to Jadzia. He had a completely different take on what had been going on with Eddington during the whole crisis with the Maquis.
And that last scene in this episode, in Act 5 with Dax and Sisko, is really the one that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Because as much as I don't believe that Sisko was acting purely out of obsession, I mean, Sisko essentially says, Eddington's not a traitor. He was just loyal to what he believed in till the very end.
Yeah.
What's like, well,
see, that's wrong.
That was the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And Sisko gains a respect for him that I'm not sure Sisko should have. I can understand forgiveness. That I understand. But that doesn't sound like that's what this is. And it sounds like a bit of a too neat a wrapping up of this in a series that doesn't necessarily always wrap things up for characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way he screamed, "You betrayed your uniform" to Eddington the episode prior to what he says here is as complete opposite as you can possibly get, and it's coming from the same person. Yeah,
and I can believe that I can believe that Ben's in a different place. I can believe that he can empathize with Rebecca on some level, having just lost her spouse because he lost his. But the whole, musing about there being something romantic about a lost cause is a line that, in a mindset that really just kind of makes me scratch my head at the end of this arc, because, Michael Eddington was his nemesis. Imagine if James Bond, finally, killed, Blofeld, in the course of a long arc. Do you think he'd sit there with Q or with Moneypenny and go, Blofeld, he wasn't that bad a guy?
I don't think so. No. Yeah. I can see where you're coming with this, and I agree 100%. It's a different mindset that he has that is not what I would have expected from Sisko. No matter what he went through with Eddington on that planet, it just didn't make sense.
So I think you and I are probably of like mind on this, but of the 3 episodes, which one's your favorite?
For the uniform, second one. The second one's great,
hands down.
Now, I will preface that with this: the episode in its entirety is the best one of the 3.
Yes,
the scene when you find out that Eddington is betraying Sisko when he stuns Kira might be one of the best scenes of the arc. But the episode for the uniform, I think, is the best episode.
I agree with that 100%. And this episode, like I said, is not bad. I wish there were a few different choices. I think it brings the arc to a very fitting close. I think that it leaves Sisko in an interesting place. I wish it was something that we revisited again, at least as far as how he felt about the whole Eddington thing. But, since we don't revisit it again, we sort of have to take this at face value. And it's not the worst ending for Sisko. It's just, it's not an ending that makes sense to me as far as how he feels.
I can agree with that. Yeah, sure.
Cool. So that kind of takes us to some central questions, and I'm just going to sort of come up with these off the top of my head. Obviously, Eddington gets some kind of redemption at the end of this episode, which I think is a pretty obvious statement. Should he?
Oh, that's a good question. Off the top of your head, and you're hitting me with one curveball that I'm not really sure to answer. From my perspective and how I feel about Starfleet and the Federation, no, I don't think he should have. He was a criminal. He did betray his uniform and his oath. So I would have to say no. He should be considered. He should be thankful that he did. But did he deserve to? No, I got to say no.
And this is one that I was very steadfast on one way prior to rewatching this episode, and afterwards, I kind of find myself not as sure anymore. Before I was like you, nope, no way. No, he betrayed the uniform. He betrayed Starfleet. He betrayed Sisko. But no, I'm done with this guy. But then it's like, well, I mean, all throughout Deep Space Nine, there is the theme of redemption. Whether it's Sisko's or, Kira's or, Damar, or Garrick or you name it. Each of those characters gets some sort of redemption in one way or another throughout the course of this series. And I think it's a recurring theme that we haven't talked about much, but maybe we will at some point. So should Eddington get some kind of redemption? It's like you said, I mean, he had to be the hero. And this kind of makes him the hero. I mean, the title sort of beats us over the head with what's going to happen at the end before we ever see it. But I don't know if he should have or not at this point. I get why they wanted to, because we're human and we like redemption stories. And ultimately he was doing what he did because he believed in what he did. But it's like, you're right. He betrayed the uniform. He betrayed Starfleet. So at this point, I'm kind of at a loss to say whether he should have or not, if that makes sense.
Well, let me add this into the equation for you. I agree with you what you say about Deep Space Nine and the different aspects of redemption. But if you look at Kira, if you look at Garrick, if you look at Sisko, they didn't do anything like Eddington did with betraying Starfleet and whatnot, all the different things that he did to, quote unquote, break the law with their storylines of redemption. So I think that's one of the main reasons why I steadfastly say no, he shouldn't have. He should consider himself lucky that he was able to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I can buy that. It's like I said before I rewatched this. I mean, I was like you. Nope, no way. No. Does it change the arc for you at all when you think about it in those terms? I mean, do you look less favorably at this episode as a result, or are you still able to watch it in context and enjoy the story?
I'm able to watch it in context and enjoy the story. Yeah, I don't believe he should have gotten the redemption, but it was still a great ending to the arc. It was a little flat, like you said. There could have been a little bit more to it, but no, it doesn't change the fact that it was something that I enjoyed watching. Just because I may not have believed that he should have gotten his redemption and what he wanted, didn't make it any more less enjoyable to see it happen. So that's how I look at it. Just because I may not agree with him being able to get what he wanted, doesn't mean that I dislike the episode any less because of that.
I can respect that. And then I don't really have another central question, but more or less a comment. And this episode, we talked about the B plot a little earlier with Nog. I think you and I have both been of the belief for the longest time that Nog is probably the character that changes the most in Deep Space Nine from start to finish. It has a complete arc, has a very interesting journey from start to finish. And this really kind of is a significant rung on that ladder of his progress toward becoming a Starfleet officer. In the scope of that character development, that is very fun to watch. And I have to give Aaron Eisenberg his due in this episode because he really does a great job with what they give him. Also, I have to say that, the last of the episodes with Ken Marshall, he just is such a great scene partner with Avery Brooks in these episodes that I'm sorry that we'll never see Eddington again after this.
That's exactly what I was going to say. When he was in a few episodes before this arc, he was good, and I enjoyed him. I didn't like him at first because he was, rubbing the wrong way with Odo, and I'm a big Odo fan, but he ended up being somebody that I trusted watching him on the show, and then this happened. It really is a shame that this arc had to come to a conclusion for the very reason that you just said. Kenneth Marshall and Avery Brooks do such a great job together, and it was wonderful to watch. It's too bad that there couldn't have been more to give to the Eddington story than what we got, because obviously it had to end, and it ended the way it did. And also to agree with you again, as I so often do on Trek Geeks, Bill, Aaron Eisenberg is just so great as Nog. You're absolutely right. He had the most growth during the entire 7-year run, more character development and growth than Jake or any of the other characters. And right from the first episode, where he's just this punk little thief Ferengi to what he is. He's now, may not be canon, but he's now captain in Starfleet with the Star Trek Online video game. And this is a significant episode for him. We get to see him do so many things as only a cadet in Starfleet, with engineering work that he's doing with the chief and security and communications when the Defiant needs it because of his nice big Ferengi ears. But he does so much, and Aaron does a wonderful job with everything that he's given. But for me, I have to say, like I said before, this may be one of the most pivotal steps in his development as a character, because he is afraid of the Klingons and he's afraid of Martok, and he stands up to him and he gets exactly what he should get, which is respect from Martok. I thought it was beautiful. I loved it. Loved that part of the story.
As you were talking, I just had this thought before we move on and wrap this part of the discussion up. It would have been really great if Eddington had survived this episode and we'd not seen him again until the last handful of episodes of Deep Space Nine, where he becomes a pivotal player in the liberation of Cardassia. That would have been absolutely killer.
Oh, yeah, it would have been fantastic.
Wouldn't that have been really interesting?
Mirror Universe episode, maybe? No, novel? I'll get started right now. Typey.
Did you say typey?
Yeah, I said it last week or on Discovering Trek or somewhere I did recently. Yeah. Well, Dan, a very good point, man. That would have been pivotal. Yeah, that would have been really nice to see. Like I said, having him gone in season 5 was it's kind of a negative if you want to look at it that way for the rest of the series.
Yeah, and then he could have come in at the end, and that could have carried forth the resolution of the conflict and maybe earned him a different type of redemption that way. Mm-hmm. That could have been really cool. But hey,
that would have been nice.
It's a great wrap up to a fantastic, trilogy of episodes. And it's been fun to talk about the last few weeks on our first ever 3-parter for Trek Geeks. What a great great character study on both Sisko and Eddington, and it's been a great time.
And it's been a great time because I've been doing it with you, Bill. Thank you.
Dan, at this point, we would be incredibly horrible people if we didn't thank our friends, the band 5 Year Mission, whose brand new album, Year 4, is available now on 5yearmission.net. You and I have heard this album. I've been listening to it almost, exclusively on repeat ever since we got access to it. And I love all of the tracks on this album. It is so great to listen to. It is right up there with every single other one of their albums. And, we have to stress that 5 Year Mission is not a Star Trek parody band. I mean, they go out and they write original songs based on every episode of Star Trek, the original series. And they are compositions that are fantastic. They are songs that dive into the episode and make you appreciate them from a different light. And that's one of the things I really love about their music. So we want everyone to head on out to 5yearmission.net, get Year 4 and every other album they have while you're at it, because they are every ounce of music you hear on the Trek Geeks podcast. And we truly can't thank them enough, Dan.
I got to agree 100% with that. That's one of the things I love most is they'll take part of a little nugget in an episode and they'll write a whole song about it, something that you wouldn't expect to have a song written about. Like, for example, one of the songs that I've been listening to the most right now is The Ultimate Computer. You don't expect them to be singing about what they sing about in the song, and I don't want to give it away. You just got to download it and listen to it. So check it out. It's really, really cool. But also what's really cool are the episodes that I find and watch every week with relation to our favorite band, 5 Year Mission. And this one's no different, Bill. I think you'll recognize it right away. Chief Engineer Andy has apparently fallen in love again, but this time it's with someone by the name of Lieutenant Mira Romaine. Does that sound familiar to you?
Vaguely, well, yes, it does.
It should.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. The Enterprise shows up at Memory Alpha and find the entire musical library has been destroyed. And then they have to fight an incorporeal race who threatened to take over Romaine's body. And I got to say that I think, if I remember correctly, one of the tracks in Year 4 is a preview of what's coming in Year 5. And I think this is going to be an episode. And I just hope that the lyrics go something like, do you remember that? That was a very important part of this episode. Yes, it's The Lights of Zephark. So you want to check it out. It's a great episode. Lots going on. Memory Alpha, Musical Library, Chief Engineer Andy, Lights of Zephark.
The Lights of Zephark. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yes. Folks, despite that Farkism, please don't let that hinder you from going on out to 5yearmission.net, getting a copy of Year 4 and listening to that on a repeat. You will thank us. You will thank yourself for treating yourself and your ears to what is a fantastic album at 5yearmission.net. Dan, next week, we're going to deep dive into a different episode, but we wanted to balance things out a bit, didn't we?
Very well done. Yes, that's right, Bill. We talked about it recently over on Trek Ranks with our good friend Jim Morehouse, and my amazing, gracious executive producer here on this podcast has given the thumbs up to do this. So it's the ultimate space version of the submarine cat and mouse episode that we love. So we're going to deep dive into the TOS classic Balance of Terror. We're going to break it all down next week on an all-new episode of Trek Geeks, your independent Star Trek podcast.
This could be one of the few times that neither you nor I need to rewatch an episode in order to get our notes about it in line to podcast about it. Because this is one that I know you have seen hundreds of times and I have seen hundreds of times. Mm-hmm. And we could probably just start riffing on it right now. But I am so excited to talk Balance of Terror because it is so pivotal in my experience as a Star Trek fan. I'm excited for this next week and can't wait to bring it to everybody. So, Dan, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to head on over to the Tricorder Transmissions, and they are online at the tricordertransmissions.com. We offer them our sincerest congratulations on the 300th episode on their network, which they achieved this past week. That is, absolutely fantastic. Amazing. We love every single one of the people over on Tricorder Transmissions. And what a great milestone for them. Here's to 3,000 more and more great discussion from some wonderful people. And of course, Dan, for all the news on all the Star Treks, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 137 of the Trek Geeks podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
You are either very brave or very stupid, Coconut. Courage comes in all sizes.
So wait, am I the coconut in this analogy?
Take it as you will, sir. And move along. Home.
Second Shap. Bing bong.
Bing bong. Don't try to do it again. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
No.
Oh, come on. That would have been fun. There would have been a double bing, double bong. To the bing, to the bong. Shoot, shoot.
No, Spotify.
No, I wasn't doing anything.
You were getting ready to salt and pepper.
No, not me. No. Sorry. Sorry. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Fantastic on this rainy morning.
Yeah, it's I have coffee in hand. I'm got a little Nantucket blend in my steaming hot in my cup, so I'm happy.
You know, the best part of waking up is coffee in your cup. I gotta say.
Somebody should use that as a slogan.
I know, right? I got some coconut coffee. Coconut. This is my coconut reference. I don't even have to do it at the end of the show now.
Thank God. So I've been listening to Year 4 ever since I got access to it. God, I love that album.
It's great. I've only listened to a couple of songs, but I love them. And you know what's funny is on Trek Ranks last week, they did an early listening of one song.
Yeah.
And then the first song that I decided to listen to, I listened to. And then I saw something else of what they're talking about. It was all the same song, Ultimate Computer. And it's great. And the other thing I love is the final track, which has the preview for the next album.
Right.
I think that's very cool.
Well, and the next album rounds out with Turnabout Intruder, so it's yay and all at the same time.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk to them and maybe extend the contract, so to speak.
What we need is 5YM TNG.
Oh my God, they'll be doing it until they're 130.
Well, okay.
I mean, I can listen to them until they're 130. I can't listen to you until you're 130.
You wouldn't.
I can barely listen to you for half an hour.
You were gonna have to. You were gonna have to because I'm gonna leave you in the Nevada desert long before then.
I'm gonna get Joey Bats to take me out to the desert.
Somebody's watched.
Look at him. Look at him. He's still breathing.
You watched Casino one too many times.
That's a good movie. That's a great movie.
It's one of my favorites. It's really the only Scorsese movie I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, me too. They could make a movie about his eyebrows, and I might watch it. No,
it'd be more of a biopic,
or maybe a horror movie.
It's like people rave about The Departed, and of course he won an Oscar for The Departed. And I listen to the fake Boston accents in that movie, and I can't get past it. Yeah. It's just it sounds.
There are some great parts. Yeah, there are some great parts with the accents terrible, but you're right. I think Casino is his best one. I'm not a big fan of his type of movies, but aside from the worst fake dummy sitting in a car before it explodes scene, the movie Casino is just classic. It's fantastic. And now that we go to Vegas, or I go to Vegas more than I ever used to, now that we go to the convention, I can kind of see scenes of or areas that were filmed during the movie. I love it.
Now, unfortunately, a lot of the hotels are gone now. They filmed. I think there's one scene at the Riviera. They filmed several scenes at the Stardust, which is gone. there's a scene toward the end of the movie where people are walking in slow-mo down the stairs into the casino over with this voiceover. That was actually the front door at the Riviera, because I've meandered through there in a somewhat inebriated state many times to try to get a cab after being at the Peppermill.
Oh my God, that's funny. Oh, Peppermill. Oh, let's do the Peppermill. Peppermill, call to God. How do you say that?
I don't know. That's kind of a really random thing. So
It was. That's all right.
yeah.
Your face is random.
Whoa. So the end of the Eddington arc, dude. How do you feel about this?
I'm feeling pretty good about it, man. I watched it again just the other day, and I had forgotten about a couple of things that I really liked. And for me, it was interesting, and I'm going to talk about it. Based on our conversation last week, I've got a very different view on Sisko because of what happens in this episode.
Oh, okay.
Little tease, even though this is going to be after the episode, it's a little tease before the episode, even though this is going to be up after.
This is hurting my brain. I feel like we just did some sort of time travel slingshot around the sun kind of deal.
Let's do a time warp again.
There you go. Spotify is going to kill us.
I didn't sing anything.
We don't need any.
Do you want me to sing?
No, we don't need any more lawsuits.
Anymore. Thank you. That's great. Appreciate that.
Hey, I can't help it if you were the only person that 5 Year Mission has ever taken legal action against.
I guess that's kind of something I should be proud of, isn't it?
You should wear like a badge.
Yeah, like a badge of dishonor. like a big red FYM on my chest on a big piece of paper.
What you really
People can walk behind me with a bell and go shame.
Shame. What you really need is a big button that says "First Plaintiff." With the 5 Year Mission album cover. The one that look like they're being attacked in the sky. Yeah,
I like it.
I like it too.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
A lot. I'm ready. You ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
I'm full of energy. I'm ready.
Dude, you were raring to go. I wish that every recording were like this with you, because normally it's like pulling teeth.
I love Spotify, but sometimes it's sad because I kind of got a Bon Jovi riff I'd like to get into because of this episode.
I hate that song. Oh my God.
So do I.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
Before we got on today, to record, I'm setting up my stuff and putting my microphone in the right spot, and I got that song going through my head, and I'm like, F.
Okay.
That stupid Bon Jovi song. Oh my God.
Yeah, it fits for the episode title though.
You ever watch much Conan O'Brien back in the day?
No, more recently than back in the day.
So I don't know if he still does this now, but back in the day, there was a regular feature by a puppet called Triumph the Insult Comic Dog.
Yes, I remember him.
And Triumph would go to these various things. So there was one where he went to the premiere of The Phantom Menace and tortured Star Wars fans.
Oof.
And brought somebody cosplaying as Spock who flipped them all off instead of giving them the live long and prosper salute.
Let me stop you for just a second. So he went to the premiere of The Phantom Menace and tortured Star Wars fans before they were tortured by The Phantom Menace?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up.
And then there's another one where he goes to a big Bon Jovi, press thing and concert at the old Giant Stadium in New Jersey. And he takes the song "You Give Love a Bad Name" and turns it into "You Give Poop a Bad Name." And that's really kind of how I feel about Bon Jovi.
Well, okay. That took a turn.
It's Bon Jovi.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I can't do it now. I got to stop myself every time.
All right. Well, let's do this before the Temptation becomes too great.
The Temptations. That's a good band too.
So everything is music with you today. Cut it out.
Sorry.
Go wear your sequin glove.
Shamo. Okay.
Here we go.